in the country with far-reaching responsibility that affects our financial welfare, our way of life, and the environment. The PRC's major responsibilities include oversight of insurance, utilities, transportation, pipeline safety, corporations, and the State Fire Marshal's Office. These are serious responsibilities that require a serious and comprehensive approach. Responsibility that I am prepared to take on day one. I received my degree in political science from American University in Washington, D.C. As a former small businessman in Santa Fe, I understand the difficulties of dealing with the red tape government often places on people who want to start a small business. I will work to expedite process of forming and registering your businesses. Having worked in government, Governor Richardson's office as Director of Boards and Commissions, I understand how agencies interact with one another and will put this experience to work for you to make the commission more effective and efficient. As an aide to then PRC Chairman Ben Ray Lujan, I know how the PRC functions. I won't need on-the-job training. I will be ready from day one to work on the decisions important to you. Having this knowledge gives me an upper hand in facilitating daily operation and provides a benefit for the people, the commission, and the district. Having recently returned from Washington, D.C., where I worked on policy issues for Congressman Lujan, I'm familiar with regulated policies on the national level, as well as with the proposed laws and regulations before the United States Congress that will impact our lives. I will be guided by a wide range of experience and my values as I look to restore transparency, integrity, and a progressive balance to the Commission. Thank you.
Could everybody hear well? Yeah. Okay, good. If anybody wants this is a mic that you're welcome to use and share. Go ahead, Valerie.
All right. I'm Valerie Espinoza, your Santa Fe County Clerk. Good evening. Thank you for showing up tonight. I was apprehensive about attending because of set-up questions that were asked at the last forum in Rio Arriba County that was co-hosted by the chair of Santa Fe County that did nothing to inform the public on the issues, nor my background as a candidate. So to avoid a repeat of what occurred before, I will confess to you at the outset, I did support candidate Senator Diana Duran for Secretary of State in the last general election. I did so because there was substantial question about the Democratic candidate's integrity and ability to hold that office. I worked in the Secretary of State's office for 6 years for Shirley Hooper and Clara Jones, and I have a lot of respect for that office, and that's why. As Santa Fe County Clerk, it was important to me personally and as a public official that the electoral process in our state be headed by a competent Secretary of State. And while I'm confessing, I will also tell you that I have never been in jail, that I have not filed for bankruptcy, that I have not been arrested or charged with any substance abuse violations, DWI or otherwise, and that I am a hardworking and people-driven person, and my record will prove it. I am a person who is concerned about our environment, global warming and electric, gas, and water rates. As a consumer, I'm equally concerned about the insurance rates, particularly health rates, insurance rates, and the practices that insurance companies follow. Over the past several months, I've been studying the broad scope of regulatory authority that is vested in the PRC, and at times, I confess, again, it has been daunting. I have met with solar companies, technical experts, engineers, telephone company managers, co-ops. I've toured the Cimarron plant. I have gone to San Juan and toured their plant. And just today, I met with Direct Power and Water and Mesa del Sol. They are a model community in renewable energy. It isn't my nature to shy away from hard work and study. I've earned 2 degrees, one from the College of Santa Fe, and I am a certified public official from New Mexico State University. I'm a graduate of the Management Institute and the only candidate with the executive service of 8 years. I am someone who can lead, manage, govern, and am ready to represent you at the state level. The PRC impacts everyone's lives, and especially our pocketbooks. And when I say all of us, I mean all of us. Ratepayers, renewable energy advocates, businessmen and women, the poor, the rich, and everybody, all with a diverse set of needs. The PRC must balance all of these divergent interests for the good of all. It's no easy task. It takes someone who is fair and ethical, and someone who will fight for them when necessary. Thank you.
Are we being recorded? There was one forum that I think we're actually, don't start timing me. Is this the forum that we have the radio show at? Is that tomorrow night?
No.
Okay. If I don't need that, can you all hear me? Okay. How many here are from El Dorado? Raise your hand. Okay. Those of you who I recognize, I'm just going to start off by asking you a question. How many of you are ready to take PNM out of the PRC? Raise your hands. All right. This is the strongest image that has been created for me from the constituents that I've been talking to, all the way from the House onto Pecos, Glorieta, all the way over to Sandoval County. There's a high level of concern. And let me have a disclaimer here. If there is anybody here from PNM, I'm using that term figuratively, because what they tell me is the rate hikes that we're having to experience are overwhelming. I am going to be the candidate who protects those rate hikes, particularly paying attention to senior citizens, to veterans, to families on fixed income, and to handicapped families who no longer have that expandable income. The rates have increased by over 41% in the most recent history. That's a huge figure, and we need to be concerned about that. My name is Virginia Vigil, and I am running for Public Regulation Commission District 3. I am your consumer watchdog, and I will stand to protect the public interest. How do I protect that public interest? I protect it by protecting the rate hike process. I protect it by looking at the way PNM has been going through their process at PRC and the kind of evaluations that have been done to allow them to continually get cost rate increases that gets passed on to the consumer. When you look at who you're going to vote for, you need to look at it as if we were all applying for a job. So I'm going to submit my job resume to you. I have a bachelor's, I have a master's, I have a jurisprudence doctorate. I've been a housewife, a mother. I have been a school teacher. I have been able to bring forth a lot of experience because I've been a prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney. And in that advocacy role, I can be your voice at the Public Regulation Commission. I can protect the public interest by being your voice. I know how to do that. I'm a county commissioner. I have been a county commissioner by representing the constituents in my district, a county that has over a $240 million budget, over 810 employees. I'm ready to move forward by taking anything on that's required as you tell me and vote for me to do. Thank you.
Okay. I will be Maki then. Hi, I'm Gallegos. What makes me want to run for the PRC? Because, to be honest, I am just tired of watching the same political people run from one position to the other, not understanding anything about the position they're running for. At the PRC, it is a serious business. It regulates business, revenue streams, profit and loss, forecasting, everything that means calculating formulas. That's what the PRC does for the state. It protects the consumer, but it also protects the business. If you don't have good business, you're not going to have a good economy, and we're going to be put in the position where we're at now as a nation. We need to bring back the ideas that we've had with small business being the foundation of our country, of our state, and our northern community. I drive through Espanola, Santa Fe, Taos, Sonora every day, and I am, as I travel the district, and I am seeing loaded up shops. I walk into small businesses and they're telling me they're struggling. Why? Because I believe people at the PRC and other government agencies all across the state do not have the concern that the people that they're representing need. Their self-deserving, self-considering, self-desired needs to be in the political limelight is hurting us as a consumer and citizen. I'm running, and I'm a small business owner, and I have to admit, in 2007 when the market crashed, I had a beautiful home in El Dorado. I just bought it, and I had it for 2 years. My 3 kids went to school here, the best school in Santa Fe, the best fire station, the best community in Santa Fe. Why? Because this is what Middle America is, and this is where it should be. Not many people can say that they've been through what I've been through, but I'm a small business owner, and what do we do when we get, when small business gets kicked to the ground? We get up, sew our legs back on, and continue walking. I completely understand all aspects of the PRC in a different way than any of my opponents. Why? Because as a business owner, as someone who's seen the industry, I've seen poor industry, poor regulation, poor compliance, kill industry, kill business, kill New Mexico jobs. That's why I'm running for the PRC. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will now have some questions. Some of these questions were submitted by email earlier. Some of these questions have been posed by folks as they came in. And I'm going to start with the latter. Okay, and we'll start with Valerie this time. How will you vote on H.R. 11? And I guess the first thing I would say is let us know what H.R. 11 is and means.
What is H.R. 11?
What is H.R. 11? Brad, you want to just...
H.R. 11 is the qualifications on the commissioners.
Okay. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but currently the qualifications are very sketchy, and they have been raised to enable us to have a more qualified candidate and person that fills the office.
Thank you for the clarification. I'm sorry I couldn't answer that at the moment, but now that I understand. I was the only candidate that was available at the legislature to support the reform bills that were proposed by Think New Mexico, and that was one of the topics and bills that would be on the ballot in November. I support that because I feel that the candidates should have a minimum requirement of at least a degree or service of some sort.
Thank you very much. Okay, go ahead.
I actually think that it's House Joint Resolution 11, and I actually spoke to legislators and lobbied in favor of it. That's one of the systemic problems within the Public Regulation Commission is that the qualifications for this highly technical, highly significant job that actually has to deal with adjudications, quasi-judicial processes, is necessary for the education, the discipline that you have is a necessary component for candidates who run for Public Regulation Commission. There's a lot of folks out there, a lot of think tanks. I think what surfaces is qualifications. And if any of you have ever gone to a hearing with the Public Regulation Commission, you will see that the rules of evidence apply. Rules of evidence are very applicable and knowledgeable by attorneys who practice law. That is one of the reasons why I think New Mexico is recommending that one of the professions that should be a part of the PRC Commission is being an attorney. I do support it, and I think it's a base recommendation. I think we actually should have higher recommendations.
Thank you. Brad, you want to go ahead?
I do believe in education and experience, but I also believe the PRC is like the magistrate. It's a people's commission. If the average citizen can't step up and say, I want to do something good for the state, then why can't they? If the elected people, if somebody wants to elect somebody into office, they should be allowed to. There shouldn't be a qualification for that. Now, based off of the experience of what we've seen at the PRC, I truly believe that we just need to educate the voter on who they vote for. Vote for experience, knowledge, even education as well. But it's not the commission or the experience that the issue lies. It's actually with the voter and the lack of knowledge of what the PRC does in the voter's eyes. And that's where I would say, so I'm against it because it is a people's commission and it should be that way.
Dan?
House Joint Resolution 11 sets qualifications, as we've heard. I think New Mexico came out with a idea of what the qualification should be. 4 years degree at a higher education or 5 years experience. That is great that if we have that, but in House Joint Resolution it doesn't set any of that. It just says the legislature wants a constitutional amendment to set forth qualifications. They don't specify what the qualifications are. So basically it's like writing a blank check to the legislature. This is our Constitution, and it sets forth on what the legislature, the PRC, the governor does. So if they want to set qualifications, they should have put it in the legislation to set the qualifications, not give a blank check. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody that would like to has 1 minute to respond to other things or add to your own notions.
I'd be happy to.
Okay, go ahead.
And you do have some diversified views here that qualifications aren't necessarily that important, and that they are that important. So I'd ask you to look at the history and the experience of what the Public Regulation Commission has had. And based on the experience that Public Regulation Commission has received, the black eye that they've received, and look at the commissioners that have represented them, that have provided that kind of publicity for the Public Regulation Commission, and look at their educational experience and their background and their ability to represent with the highest qualifications, the best experience, the most education that they could possibly bring to that. You need even technical information to make appropriate decisions for the public in that position. I disagree with having it be a Public Regulation Commission, such as the legislature is. I have a little more time, so I was just now I'm done. Thank you.
There are 2 other constitutional amendments that will be on the ballot in regards to New Mexico's bills as well, and that is the one to remove the corporations division out into the Secretary of State's office. I think with my background as county clerk, that might not be necessary, because should I get there and represent you as your next PRC commissioner, I will be able to do the same thing I did at the clerk's office, and that is scan, digitize those thousands of corporations that they have there on record that are pretty much disorganized.
Brad, go ahead. You got a minute?
Going off of the experience and knowledge, I think everybody here can say that we all have education, we all have experience. We all have a full understanding of what needs to be done when it comes to being a commissioner. But it also, as Virginia stated, it's the technical part and the business ideology of the commission that's what's lacking. You have to have a business background. You have to understand what's in front of you to be able to do a good job and make the right decisions. If you don't make the right decisions, the state, your citizens are going to suffer. Not only in District 3, but the whole state, because it affects everybody in this room, everybody in the state. Experience is where we need it.
I have a question. Are rebuttals allowed to go beyond the scope of the subject, or do we stick to the subject?
We'd like to sort of yes,
Okay.
the best you can. Do you have anything you want to add on this particular topic?
I think we covered it.
Okay, all right, very good. Okay, here's another question, and we'll start off with Virginia. Have any of you ever accepted money, donations, campaign contributions from Verizon or AT&T or corporations that support ALEC?
I have to tell you that that's specifically prohibited by the statute. You actually can look at the front of the first statute of the Public Regulation Commission. Public Regulation Commissioners are not allowed to accept any contributions from anyone that they regulate. I see Carlos affirming that for me. The truth of the matter is that when you do that, you're actually not following the level of integrity, ethics, transparency that is so needed in that office. I have never accepted contributions from anyone that the Public Regulation Commission would regulate.
Thank you. Brad?
No, I have not accepted any contributions from any companies or persons that the PRC regulates. It is against state statute, and it's a straight answer.
Okay. Dan?
In the statute, as we heard, you cannot take money from anybody that you regulate. And I have not taken money from anybody we regulate. I mean, you have P&M, you have CenturyLink, you have all the insurance departments, insurance providers. I have not taken any money from anybody that we regulate directly.
Thank you.
In response to that, I think people need to know the truth. If you look at the reports that are now online at the Secretary of State's office, anybody can actually see that Verizon did actually indeed give campaign contribution. And I called corporate headquarters because I felt as a consumer, a user, and the county has their Verizon cell phones. Every employee, or not every employee, but that is our carrier. So I called corporate headquarters and I felt that, it was inappropriate. And they said that they investigated the contribution and it came from a congressional lobbyist. So I have not and will not accept contributions. I take them from the, my support comes in $5 contributions from the little guys that represent me. Thank you.
All right. If we know the law and who we regulate, we do not regulate wireless telephone companies. So Verizon is not considered a regulated entity at the PRC. So if you understand who we regulate, it's Quest or CenturyLink, P&M, and insurance companies. So am I following the law? Yes, I am.
You do regulate the services.
No.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question? That was my question.
No.
Okay. Well,
Yep, but you can certainly write one down and bring it up, and I will certainly consider it. I think we're through that particular question. We'll move on to the next question. Okay, all right.
When it comes to wireless cell phones, the only reason why it's not regulated in this industry, in this state, is because legislation needs to, there's too many lobbyists against it. Verizon, and you have more jurisdiction in the city and counties in this state than the PRC does when it comes to your wireless netting, your wireless companies. The only thing I'd like to say is if we wanted regulation on wireless, it has to go through legislation, and I think everybody in this room has an issue with wireless, drop calls, extra fees, and such. The only thing I would suggest, call your legislator, let's put it on the ballot and get this industry regulated properly, because it's not regulated the way it should be. If FCC right now regulates it, but calling FCC on a complaint is twice as hard as it should be.
Okay, we'll finish with that question, and we'll move on to the next. Another one submitted by folks here this evening. Being that the relation to the consumer and energy is supply and demand, what would be the most efficient way to supply clean energy to the market at the most reasonable cost? And let's see. Yeah, I think you're first this time, and then we'll go back to Dan.
Can you repeat it one more time?
Sure thing. Being that the relation to the consumer and energy is supply and demand, what would be the most efficient way to supply clean energy to the market at the most reasonable cost?
I think the question goes to decoupling. And decoupling is a industry word, so I'll just explain it in a nutshell. This is the issue. The idea is to create a different way, financial way, for your utility companies to make their money, so they don't have the need to sell more energy. This will allow more energy to be processed and used on the grid. I think this should also make the companies be more stable in the end, so in the future, we as consumers will not be raked over the coals. Did everybody understand it?
No.
See, it's all jargon, so I'll put it in layman's terms. It's all about supply and demand. If a company wants to make money, they have to sell more energy. And the way to sell more energy is the cheapest way possible. Right now, you have coal. Very cheap producing energy. Everybody wants to go to renewable energy. I want renewable energy in the state. I think it creates jobs. It's going to prosper for the state, for the future of our children, and the future of our country. But the idea is it's too expensive. How do we bring it down, and how do we make it cheaper? There is so the idea is, where do we go to make it cheaper? How do we create a new financial system to allow that? And right now, it's being suggested in many economists' eyes and financial advisors trying to figure out how to make the energy system flow better.
Okay, thank you. All right, Danny, fire away.
Right now, we're heading down a bad path with utility companies charging for what they sell. So decoupling, which Brad is trying to explain, is trying to find a new way. It's a tool for regulators and policymakers to use in order to change that formula. Instead of going supply and selling what to the demand level, it's changing that up. But that's just one piece of it. We have to make sure we look at it many different ways. Decoupling allows for incentives in order for people to use energy efficient appliances. It's also switching light bulbs. It's a program used in order to have the utility company find new ways, alternative ways, to lower the consumer's energy use instead of trying to have the consumer maximize their energy. It's finding a newer way. So decoupling is a way of going and creating these incentive programs, rebates for energy efficiency, and also making sure that if we do decoupling, that PNM is held responsible for making sure they follow through with the program. Because under the RPS that was passed in 2006, P&M hasn't done well at making sure they're responsible for obtaining the 20% by 2020. They're not acting in good faith. We got to make sure we bring them back in and put them in good faith, and make sure they act on the renewable energy that they're supposed to be creating. And instead of using the law to find ways out of doing that. So that's what we need to do.
Thank you. Valerie?
The Renewable Energy Act, the REA, defines the percent of renewable energies that utilities need to provide. PRC rules define the diversity mix of this energy between wind, solar, distributed generation, and other. PRC rules also define the reasonable cost threshold, RCT, for implementing the REA and mix requirements. I would support these new technologies. There's so many out there, so many startup companies that can contribute and help P&M meet their standards, but I would also demand that they meet their standards and not approve any extensions for their request for more time to meet that standard. I would also hold, which very important to me, is New Mexico Gas. Everybody talks about P&M here. New Mexico Gas left our northern New Mexico residents in District 3, the district that will represent each and every one of you here. They left them in parts of Bernalillo, Taos, Rio Arriba, out in the cold. We didn't get impacted by that, but I would like answers. When I was in Taos County, people want to know what really happened. I don't think we've had any answers to what really happened with the outage and those people that were left out. There were probably 30,000 people left out in the cold. And so I'd like to see that there is a supply met for that demand, that particular demand, and that it doesn't happen again.
Virginia?
How you promote and what the relationship is to energy and getting clean energy into the market, there are three ways you do that. You do that statutorily, and the PRC has currently done that through their Efficiency Use of Energy Act, through their Renewable Energy Act, and through their Integrated Resource Planning process for utility companies. The PRC needs to aggressively be able to have oversight for each one of those processes. The second way you do it is you provide incentives. Incentives need to be provided in order to promote clean energy. Currently, there was a large percentage of incentives that were available from P&M to project owners to provide for incentives and tax incentives. But P&M went back to the PRC and requested a reduction in that by looking at their integrated resource plan and changing some of the assumptions that existed there, and got that percentage reduced. So the incentives aren't out there to promote clean energy anymore. And the third way you promote clean energy is through addressing conservation. You cannot do it without conservation. It's very much like what we did as a county commissioner, and we were dealing with water issues and continue to deal with water issues. When you look at conservation measures, conservation and protecting the precious resources we have, then you can start looking at promoting much more clean energy.
Okay, thank you. See, everybody's had a chance to answer the question. You?
No, I wasn't going there.
Oh, you want the 1 minute to respond to others?
Spoiled us.
Yeah. All right. Anybody that wants to has 1 minute in response to other comments or add your own.
Everybody up here is absolutely right. Incentives, free markets, statutory ideas, conservation, they all are good ideas. And but there is something that I think Danny touched on, which is the RCT, is the reasonable cost threshold. That is a complicated formula, and that is how much you can charge back to the ratepayers. And it's all about revenue. when it comes to energy, how much it's going to cost, and how much can they put back on the ratepayers, the citizens. And that's where I think the question lies when it comes to renewable energy. How much can we afford? Where is our breaking point? The state mandates 10% by 2020, and then but right now it goes from right now we're supposed to mandate it at 5% this year, and then each year it goes up 1%. But that's where the question is, and I may be wrong on the exact amounts, but there is a formula to it. But that's where we need to work on is where it goes, because right now the RCT is basically the biggest question on paper.
Thank you.
I will comment as well. It does start with energy conservation in the homes, and I didn't just start conserving now. I've always conserved. In fact, over the last several years, I won a pollution prevention awareness award at Los Alamos National Lab, and that was like I said before, when the country wasn't cool, or it was when environmental wasn't in, and so I've always been a conservative. I just thought that was important to say, because it does start at the home.
Okay. And also, as we look at finding new ways to promote renewable energy, we have to look at our infrastructure. Our infrastructure is outdated. The best place where we can harness our energy is on the east side of the state. And if we look at our grid system on the east side of the state, it's like we're living in a third world system, a third world country. So what we have to do is find ways in order to upgrade our infrastructure and develop the resources available in order to harness our wind and solar. And the way you do that is at the PRC, we have funds there that will leverage the money in order to create low interest loans to harness the environment, the business environment, in order to create the transmission lines needed. And so there's many ways we can do this, but it comes down to infrastructure also.
Thank you. Virginia, did you want to add anything?
It's sounding like we're allowed to amplify here rather than rebut. So what I would amplify is to say, really, we need to look at the paradigm, what currently exists. And we have an investor-based utility that's being regulated. We need to change that paradigm. We need to change that paradigm to a rate and service-based utility. And that can involve decoupling, as has been mentioned earlier, but it also requires us to look at the system and start reviewing all the processes that are in place. The reasonable cost threshold that has been referenced today, I said that gets manipulated quite a bit based on the assumptions that are brought before the Public Regulation Commission. So all of those have to be aggressively scrutinized by public regulation commissioners when they come before them on those rate increases. Changing a paradigm is the way to go.
Thank you very much, all of you. Okay, here's a person that's indeed concerned about PNM's change in tactics under this administration, but equally concerned about Blue Cross Blue Shield. We haven't talked much about regulating insurance yet, but this raises that question. Their rate hike request, while shipping their substantial profits off to the corporate office. And what is your position on Blue Cross Blue Shield? And start now with Danny.
Blue Cross Blue Shield is one of the largest insurance providers in the United States. What happened 2 years ago was Blue Cross Blue Shield asked for a 23% rate increase. That rate increase was done behind closed doors. That's not right. That affects all of us at that rate increase. What needed to be done is we needed to make sure we had hearings throughout the community. We take the commission out to you to hear your concerns on the rate increase. This doesn't need to be behind closed doors. And the way we stop that is with the superintendent of insurance. Right now, the superintendent is protected by constitutional, saying that you cannot remove them without will. They should be, or just cause, sorry. They should be an at-will employee because they should serve the commission. Commissioners should appoint them and remove them if they don't do what's right. So we need to bring those insurance rate increases out of behind closed doors and to the public, so we can hear exactly what's going on and voice our concerns.
Okay, Valerie?
The superintendent, again, doesn't report directly to, they appoint, the commission appoints the superintendent, but when the superintendent makes decisions, the people that get the heat for it are the public regulation commissioners, yet they're not the ones that approve the rates. Blue Cross Blue Shield, they're an insurance company, a health insurance company that's in it for profit. So the only way to get around that is when you keep people healthy, that's the only way to lower your long-term costs. So these increases that they continue to ask for is not in the jurisdiction of the PRC commissioner itself. I think it's inappropriate to, they just asked for one, it hasn't been a year, and now they're asking again. There we go, the PRC impacts your pocketbook, but the PRC commissioners aren't the ones that make that decision, it's the superintendent. You either appoint a superintendent that's gonna say no, or you take that position and remove it to somebody who will, like the governor, who can appoint someone that will hold them accountable to us.
You know, we're really on the cusp of many significant changes with the Public Regulation Commission. The Superintendent of Insurance is another one of those House Joint Resolutions that's being proposed to the electorate in November. If that in fact does get passed, then the problem that the legislature is going to have is where to place it, because the only question will go to the voters. The question will say, should the Superintendent of Insurance be removed from the Public Regulation Commission? If the voters say yes, then that issue has to go back to the legislature, and the legislature has to find a home for them. Superintendent of Insurance does have autonomy in terms of the decisions that they make. Transparency does need to be a part of that. One of the ways that can happen is by having a Public Regulation Commission that self-regulates themselves. I have passed an ethics ordinance with Santa Fe County that promotes transparency, that promotes conflict of interest, and that prohibits ex parte communication so that Blue Cross cannot go behind closed doors to speak to anyone. That needs to be a significant part of what the Public Regulation Commission does, so that that kind of transparency and process is very much a part of what the public knows, sees, and hears. And in that process, when the Superintendent of Insurance does make an independent decision, that decision can be to increase rates or at what level they increase rates. That does go to the Public Regulation Commission, but the Public Regulation Commission is kind of strapped because the only thing they can review is the record. They cannot have a new hearing. If anybody wants a new hearing, it has to go to district court. So that does not allow for the Public Regulation Commission to have the appropriate oversight and jurisdiction for the Superintendent of Insurance. Thank you.
Continuing on with all of these guys are saying, so how do we fix the problem? That is the question. The issue with the Superintendent of Insurance can approve or deny insurance premiums increases on their own without no involvement from the commissioners. I think we should propose different legislation that would have lessened the authority of the superintendent and make it so as if a party appealed a decision of the superintendent that the commissioners could modify the decision if needed. This is more of a realistic approach to reform rather than just passing over one agency like the law is, or like they are suggesting now. When it comes to the issue and the superintendents are hired by all the commissioners. They're suggested to be hired, but they have no authority over him. So the new law that Virginia proposed, it doesn't fix the problem. It's just making the agency to go from one place to the other. And actually what it does is, I think it gives more room for PRC than it does if it was stayed at the PRC, because now the governor or future governors has more control of who they put there.
Okay, anybody want to respond to any of this? Okay, Danny, you go first.
Yeah, it was talked about the House Joint Resolution that was passed with the constitutional amendment, removing the insurance division out of the PRC. Right now, I feel we need to do something. We need to make sure the commission's serving the public, serving us. And the way we do that is we look at possibly going to the League of Women Voters and have them do an external audit, the legislature do an external audit, and the PRC do an internal audit, and we figure out what's best for New Mexico. Removing the Insurance Commission out right now will give the authority to the governor. And right now we know she does not like the Health Care Act that was passed by Congress a few years ago. So that will take that authority away from us and allow her to not fulfill our obligations, what was set through the Health Care Act passed by Congress.
That ballot measure wouldn't be on till November, so it wouldn't apply till 2013 actually, and hopefully she'll be gone by that time. But I do.
That's all we have to say.
A popular sentiment apparently in this room.
I did find the numbers for the Blue Cross Blue Shield raise that was already implemented, and that was they raised their premiums by 6.9%, and that was on 31,000 New Mexicans. They initially sought a 9.9% increase, and that means that was the second in 3 years. So the 6.9 was negotiated by the superintendent and Blue Cross Blue Shield. I mean, how fair is that?
Thank you. You know, one of the things that I've discovered when I'm talking to folks throughout this district is they really don't know what the PRC is in some cases, or what the PRC does in other cases. And so I want to take this opportunity just briefly to promote an educational piece with this. I don't know if many of you know how the Public Regulation Commission legislation was created. It really was at the 11th hour, and it became a catch-all for all these responsibilities that they're dealing with. So one of the attempts to reform is to recognize that maybe the Public Regulation Commission has too much responsibility, and indeed in most other states, regulatory law and regulatory responsibility is limited to utilities in many of these states. So the fact of the matter is that the legislature is trying to address the original problem that was created, and that was because it's a catch-all for all kinds of responsibilities. They are responsible for pipeline safety, and my time is up.
Do you want to add anything, Brian?
I do. You know, the insurance division creates about $250 million each year in fines collected, fees collected, and services. And it goes straight to the general fund. It is an important position that needs to be regulated and watched in detail. I do agree that some of the PRC is too big, and they do regulate a lot. But we also have to look about how fast we move and how fast legislation moves to create that. Are we actually putting the cart before the horse by actually saying, oh, we're going to move the insurance division out? Or are we going, or is it a good idea? I guess the voters are going to decide in November, but we should really take a stronger look at that, because it did go through the 11th hour, just like Virginia said. This is an issue that needs to be addressed with specifics.
Thank you. Okay. Another question?
Now, I get that a little fun.
Pardon?
This is some of my favorite time of the evening. First, we have another candidate here, Dr. Steve Easley, who's running for House District 50. This is Sharon Lujan, who's running for county clerk. I don't think I see anybody else. Oh, Pat Farrella?
Is that here?
Ah, there he is. He's running for county treasurer. And then I get to bring out my favorite black hat. The idea of this black hat is a magic hat. And as it gets passed around, hopefully it turns green for the benefit of the county party. Dr. Easley, since you were the first new candidate I saw, let me use the hats around if I need to keep the time. Thank you.
Take it around or just pass it?
Take it past, whatever's more comfortable.
Okay.
So is this like Toastmasters where you put $1 in there and then get asked a question?
If anybody does have some more questions to ask, I have some more cards we can throw it out.
Okay, here's kind of a follow-up question. This person says that Verizon is a union-busting company. Therefore, have any of you taken money from Verizon? And we'll start, let's start with Valerie.
No, I have not, and I can't appreciate anyone that has, because again, I paid my phone bill to Verizon, and so does the county, so no.
Okay? Go ahead.
I don't appreciate union busting, for one thing. As a matter of fact, was really strong in taking a leadership role when St. Vincent Christus and the nurses were having their difficulties. And it was the message that we were getting that they were trying to actually union bust. Verizon, a union busting company, is not something I would appreciate, and I don't appreciate their costs. Because I'm a Verizon customer and I'm paying too much, and they constantly increase those rates. And there's some hidden rates in there that I think the Public Regulation Commission needs to start looking at. Because I received a 55-cent line item increase in my Verizon bill that nobody could explain to me. So, you know, a lot of the billing that we're getting from the telecom companies aren't really clear for us. We need to start getting further clear on those telecom billings.
Okay, thanks. Brett?
Once again, we do want the Verizon and many companies like that to be regulated by our state rather than more authority with the city and county. We need like good, hard legislation and keep the lobbyists away from our legislators and pass the right laws so we can so we can hold them accountable, because it's important that we do that. Now, going back to the union busting, Verizon union busting, I would not, union busting should not be allowed. We are, it is a nice way, I believe we're a union state. There's good people here, but I also see, when I go to union halls, and I see on the clipboards, there are lots of names on the boards without jobs. We have to figure out a way to bring jobs back into life. I know it's not the job of the PRC, because our main duty is to regulate the companies, but we can do something about it if we all work as a community and we all work together.
Very good. Danny?
All right, just so you know, I have not taken money from Verizon directly. A friend of mine who works for a company who represents Verizon and many other companies who I've known for several years gave me a donation. And so they keep saying that he works for Verizon. He works for Verizon. He doesn't. He works for a company that represents Verizon. But for that, I am a proud union member. When I was worked for America West Airlines, I helped organize America West Airlines to become a union company. With TWU, we did that with my ramp friends and myself. I'm proud to say I have IBEW's endorsement. I have AFSCME's endorsement. I have the Rio Rancho Firefighters Union endorsement. And we're working on trying to get all union support, because I believe in unions. Without a union, we do not have a middle class. So that's why I am proud to have the sponsor of the support of these unions. So to say that, so to leave it at that, I'm a proud union member. And also, it's another joke I say, about the union. I come from a strong union family. My father, who's here, is Butch Maki, and he was a member of, he's the vice president of CWU in Arizona. And my mother here, Connie Maki, was a steward. So without the union, I wouldn't be here. Literally, I would not be here without the union. So I want to say thank you to the unions for that.
Okay. Okay, here's a question kind of about administration of the PRC. What criteria should commissioners use in selecting the chief of staff and other key managers? And let's start with Virginia.
Actually, the first criteria the Public Regulation Commission needs to look at is the same criteria that voters need to look at, and that is qualifications, experience, background, how that experience and background lends itself to making really good decisions, how that person can actually represent the Public Regulation Commission. The Chief of Staff of the Public Regulation Commission in many places, at the legislature, all throughout the state, becomes the face of the Public Regulation Commission in the absence of Public Regulation Commissioners. At Santa Fe County, we are currently looking at performance-based standards. That is something that I would not shy away from. Performance-based standards are standards that are required by employees to meet the job description that they are hired for and how well they meet them. And it's not as easy as it sounds. It's rather complicated, but administering the Public Regulation Commission goes to the Chief of Staff. The Public Regulation Commission does not need to administer beyond that, because if they start administering the Public Regulation Commission, then they start bringing in a political element to hiring and firing, and that is something that they've been doing for too long. They cannot do that anymore. The ethics ordinance that I drafted and got enacted through Santa Fe County prohibits elected officials from getting involved in personnel issues. That is a huge cultural change that needs to happen not only at the Public Regulation Commission, but throughout an entire state.
Brad?
I have to agree. I like the plan that the county is proposing and doing. I like the idea of job descriptions, performance-based standards. It makes sense. The chief of staff is the face of the PRC in many aspects. We do need to continue to give our state, our citizens, the right choices. And this is one of the choices the commissioners should rely on when it comes and completely go off of qualifications, references, and such.
The Chief of Staff is a very important position in the PRC. That's the manager of all the staff. That's the person that makes sure the message gets out, what the wishes are of the commission. So that person is very important. One important element we have to make sure is they have a strong management aspect and able to handle different people and different personalities. Because as we know, the PRC is a broad range of areas, from insurance, utility, to transportation. There's a lot of different people, and that person has to be able to manage and make sure the message of the commissioners are being heard down to the staff level. Because without a strong manager, you have a weak department.
I have a real simple answer to that one. No more cronyism. I would certainly like to be involved in the decision of who is going to be my chief of staff. And my backgrounds in HR, human services, organizational psychology would certainly enable me. I'd like to be a part of who is going to work for me in hiring that person.
Thank you. Virginia?
I answered that.
Ah, okay, sorry.
You want me to add on to it?
No.
there's 250 employees at the PRC. And I guarantee you, I've talked to a lot of them, and all they are looking for is good leadership. Straightforward answer, good leadership, good management, and someone that will listen to them, and someone that will help them with their job. But the PRC, if you haven't noticed, there's lots of industry, in lots of different industries that they regulate, lots of different divisions, and without a good manager, it falls apart. And I think we've seen it in the past. Right now, I believe we're on an upward trend to, and we're seeing some good leadership. But let's train our managers at the PRC. Let's hire a qualified chief of staff, and hire a qualified chief of staff, which I believe we actually have one on the job now. But let's look at training and management skills at the PRC.
There are actually over 300 employees. There are 20 attorneys, staff attorneys, and I'm not sure if we need any more.
That's just so you guys know how the employees are chosen at the PRC. There's 5 commissioners. It takes 3 commissioners in order to appoint a new person or remove an appointed person. There's 27 exempt employees. Those 27 exempt employees are chosen by the commission as a whole. So it takes 3 commissioners in order to make those changes. But when we look at open vacancies and seeing how people are done, we have to look at the job they're doing. If they're being effective, if they're reaching out to the consumers, if they're helping New Mexico move forward. So we have to look at not just the chief of staff, but all 27 exempt employees.
Okay, another question. Decisions made by the PRC are dependent on coalition building between commissioners. What experience do you have in terms of coalition building? And let's start with Brad.
Coalition building. I'm self-employed. Everything I do has to deal with customers and back-end business. Right now, I'm employed with Hamilton Group Funding. I'm the New Mexico operations. I'm chief manager. I deal with compliance. I deal with regulation. I deal with customers. I deal with just about every facet of the financial industry in small banking. When it comes to relationship building, that's all I do every day. You cannot go 1 minute without understanding that you have to use every tool in the shed, and you have to understand that everybody is valuable. And when it comes to the other commissioners with equal, power or responsibility, it is important that we understand each other at a personal level and a business level. I always say, if you want to know somebody who's talking to you, know everything about them, because it's important to build a relationship wholeheartedly.
Thank you. I'm just going to go down the line. Virginia, why don't you go ahead?
Okay. With due respect to my colleagues, I'm going to make this statement because it does distinguish me from them. I am the only public regulation commission that has operated in a 5-member governing board. I am a Santa Fe County commissioner. I know what a majority vote is that need to be acquired to get public policy passed. And I know what it's like to have to navigate your way to make that happen. And that's exactly the kind of experience and leadership that I will take to the Public Regulation Commission. And it is not an easy learning curve, because there are competing interests that you have to work with, to compromise. And not only that, but my leadership skills lend themselves not only to coalitions, but to collaborations, to consensus building. And I want to give an example of that. As a representative of a traditional historic village, Agua Fria Village Association came to me as their representative saying that PNM was going to put a substation in their traditional historic village. When PNM came to us through our zoning authority to get that place there, I said, PNM, I want you to meet with the residents together, you get a win-win situation. And when you have that kind of leadership experience that you can take to a 5-member governing body that the PRC represents right now, you've got a huge head start in knowing how to navigate your way to make good public policy happen.
Thank you. Okay, Valerie?
I'm already building coalitions, and I have been forever, not only in the 8 years as county clerk, but I work closely on tribal outreach with our voter drives. But I build coalitions by bringing people to the table. I have an effective record on doing just that. The title companies, I host quarterly title company meetings with them, and I hope the candidates that are here for county clerk continue that because it's very effective to get their input. I build coalitions between the different elected offices, the treasurer, the assessor. We all work together to make it easier for you to have a one-stop shop instead of having to go to each different department. That's building coalitions. I have mediation training at Los Alamos. Los Alamos was very good to me. I was there 20 years. I took advantage of many of their programs. One was mediation training. And one of my jobs there was to mediate HR and problems within the organization with employees. And so, again, I feel like I'm already building coalitions by reaching out to some of these agencies and companies, the renewable energy people. We can bring them all to the table and work out something that's going to work for PNM, New Mexico Gas, the consumers. And I think that's how you build coalitions, bringing everybody to the table and really working together instead of always being at odds.
All right. Building coalition is getting a number of votes in order to get something passed. PRC, there's 5 members, you need 3 votes. Getting 3 votes is a lot easier than getting 218. When I worked in the United States Congress, we had to work with other members throughout the United States, other members from different states, in order to get to the magic number 218 in order to pass the legislation. So I know how to build coalitions, and I used to call it herding cats. When you need to get to that many numbers, you have to herd cats in order to get the votes you need. So making sure we have the right number of votes in order to get the important issues passed, it is important. We got to make sure you talk to all the other members. There's 5 commissioners, we talk to all of them. We make sure we have everything we need in order to get this piece of rule, decision, or legislation passed. So I have a strong background in building coalitions.
Great, thank you.
Just to continue with the conversation, when it comes to my own experience about being on coalitions and team building, I can honestly tell you, get me on a board, get me in the office setting, I will make things happen, because that's what we do as small business owners. We make things happen and we get things going. The economy is stirred by small business. I am part of small business, and that's what we need. There's too much bureaucracy right now that we see, government policies that we don't get the right answers as citizens. We need somebody that understands business, that can go in there and negate and get things done. Even talking to the other commissioners, because it's not just about the commissioners, it's about what's in front of them. And that's what I'd like to say. Thank you.
Okay.
Making sure that we reach out. We see a division in Congress, even our state legislature. We see it in the PRC right now. It's a division. It's a party division. We need to be able to break that division and make sure that we are serving the people that elect us. Building a coalition and making sure we have the right amount of votes in order to pass the rule that will, in fact, help us and protect us. That's the important portion of building a coalition. We have to stop the division between one side and another, and you have to work across aisles and work together as a team.
Thank you. All right.
There seeming to be two parts to this question: the kind of coalitions you can build outside of the PRC, which are critical, and the coalition building that you need inside the PRC to get the 3-2 vote or the 5-0 vote, which would be preferable, because that means you're educating your colleagues and creating a wonderful advocacy for the outcome. So coalition building with the community is something that I strongly support. As a matter of fact, civic engagement is very much a part of my platform. Actually have already brought forth roundtables on energy efficiency and green economy, because I do not have all of the knowledge. But guess what? We have an incredible amount of knowledge in our community. And to bring that knowledge to the Public Regulation Commission through a coalition outside of the PRC that I would bring, and that would be a citizens review committee that would provide an advisory role to the Public Regulation Commission in the areas of alternative energy and a green economy. And those coalitions are very much a part of who I am, and the consensus building that needs to occur within the Public Regulation Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Like this question: how will healthcare reform impact the PRC, and what specialized expertise do you possess that would enable you to lead decision-making in this critical area? Remember, the uninsured rate in New Mexico is astronomical, and this directly impacts our community today and into the distant future. Let's see. Go ahead, start.
Okay. The Commission will oversee the healthcare exchange that was passed in the Healthcare Act. That's the important portion of this law. It's making sure we find ways to get the uninsured insured. Creating that pool, setting the parameters of the healthcare exchange is the important portion. And that's what the PRC will work on, is how that healthcare exchange will be implemented. We have funds coming from the federal government that will help start this healthcare exchange. Making sure we do it properly and implement everything that needs to be done by 2014 so we don't lose this funding is the critical portion. So my expertise is I helped work that bill in Congress, so I know the ins and outs. And if we have a problem with something, I know where we need to go to on the federal side in order to make sure we get what we need and how we handle it. My expertise play big in this because I know what we need to do in order to make this exchange happen. And we cannot let the governor take this and make it her issue and make sure it doesn't happen. Uninsured people in New Mexico is high, and we have to make sure we get health care for everybody. And health care, I believe, is a right to everybody.
Thank you. Valerie?
Again, that falls under the insurance department, and so, you know, the answer is impressive, but I'm going to have to pass on that one.
Okay. All right.
The new Health Care Act is really critical for states to actually get their acts together. One of the critical components of the Health Care Act is that there be state or local health care boards, health care entities, health care advisory task forces, because they are going to have to be the ones that actually apply for the dollars that are going to come down to from the federal to the state level to the local level. So the Public Regulation Commission, if they provide a really strong leadership role, will provide the educational outreach, the necessary support for local entities to start forming these healthcare boards. And I know in Santa Fe County we have a Health Policy and Planning Commission, which will be highly instrumental in accessing those dollars. Those dollars are going to be competitive. They will be competitive. And as soon as we can get our act together to get those healthcare boards in place, to start looking at what dollars need to be accessed, dollars drive the benefit for health. It is through the dollars that we're able to receive the kinds of services that are needed in your community. And so I don't want to lose that opportunity at all. One of the jump starts I would do is make sure that those boards are in place and that they're highly technically knowledgeable in terms of accessing those dollars.
Good. Brad?
As soon as we reel in the superintendent and change the legislation and the laws where they can actually be, the decision's not made by one man when it comes to all these type of rules that are coming up, the better. Uninsured, how do you say? Uninsured, insured, and uninsured people. Underinsured people, there you go. It's too much in New Mexico. We need to understand that. As a small business owner, I have to admit, I don't have insurance now. So I guarantee you, as a commissioner, if it's not done right, I will make sure that it's going to be completely understand to help the entire, to help the citizens of New Mexico get insured. We as small business owners have paid up to $750 to $1,250 a month for insurance. I understand the issues because I'm living it now. I'm not employed by state employee, so I don't have that benefit. But at the same time, I will always understand it because that's where I'm from. I'm from the uninsured person because that's who I am. Uninsured right now, trying to make things right. One of the reasons why I'm running for office is because I see it as a wrong. And I see the issues that are coming up, and the people that are making the decisions are not helping the citizens. We have to have a citizen to help the citizen become educated, knowledgeable, and insured.
Do you want to add something?
That is why it's important to make sure we have the healthcare exchange set up. So you can tap into the healthcare exchange and get affordable healthcare. Make sure your family is protected. Healthcare is a right, and we must have it for all and available for anybody that to get it.
Okay, we're getting short on time, so there's, I think we have time for one more question. Do you support the let me see if this is the one. Yeah. Do you support the constitutional amendments to scale back the PRC's scope of responsibilities by removing insurance and the registration of corporations? Do you support reducing PRC's responsibilities over motor carriers, the state fire marshal's office, or other areas? Valerie, why don't you start off?
I supported them during the legislature and was not allowed, I didn't allow the reform bills to die, and so I supported them then and I support them now, because if you put the corporations into the Secretary of State's office and insurance into another department and then increase the requirements, then you give the PRC commissioners the time to do the job that they were hired or elected to do. It takes away responsibility and gives them the ability to take care of the business at hand.
Thank you. Virginia?
I do support the transferring of the filing of LLCs and S corporations to the Secretary of State's office. And I support that from a personal experience because I tried to file my LLC with the Public Regulation Commission. And I noticed, I'm looking out there are some PRC employees. Let me sort of make a caveat here. You know, none of this can happen without, with regard to my leadership, without stakeholder input. So Public Regulation Commission employees who are affected by any of these changes need to be a part of decision-making and decision processes. If in fact the referendum itself does pass, it actually just relocates LLC and S corporation and any other kind of limited liability company over to the Secretary of State. New Mexico is one of the few states in the nation who delegates that responsibility outside of the Secretary of State's office. So we would be following the same pattern that most other states are. We actually definitely think that that administrative responsibility has very little impact, except perhaps to those employees who may not want to leave. And that is a factor that needs to be considered. The motor carriers are very much embedded at the Public Regulation Commission. However, it's one of those responsibilities that will need some analysis, because there might be a better home for them. You know, the Department of Transportation may be a really good place for motor carriers. The Superintendent of Insurance, I think we've already addressed. And I think the Superintendent of Insurance, if the voters don't pass it, it's going to have to be resystemized, realigned, and responsibility is going to have to go to the public with that.
Okay. I believe that the PRC is due for a lot of changes in the next 10 years. I want to be a part of that. Going back to the question, superintendents, we did address that question. I think everybody agrees that we need to fix it, and the voters are going to put that into play. The LLC, I do agree that the LLC should move to the Secretary of State's. I do agree with Virginia that that is the position where it goes. But I also recognize that 85% of the administration the PRC regulates at this time. So cart before the horse. Let's put the cart before the horse. Let's just agree that it needs to move. Let's make it. Let's pass that bill. Any other question? Motor carriers. Motor carriers. That is a big question. Where does it go? Does it go to the DOT? Is that giving more acceptable power to going back to other departments, or eventually the governor? That's a question to be led as well. The PRC is designed for a citizen protection, to protect the citizens from corporations and vice versa, to help the businesses grow as well. But if you do not recognize that that government has a funny way of spinning things around, and all of a sudden there's less transparency, more fraud, then we have a big question. We have a big problem. I truly believe that the government needs to be open with transparency, and be held accountable, just as if a small business would be. You know, if we do wrong, we pay in fines, we pay in closing our shops. Our government should be sustainable. We have to understand that.
Thank you.
Let's look at the history, how the PRC became. The legislature took all these different departments and smushed them together and had a late night vote and created the Public Regulation Commission. Took the PUC, the state corporation, pulled the fire marshal's office, all these entities, and put them into one group. They put it together so fast. That's why we're in the situation we're in. We can't be right now just grabbing and pulling them out real quick, because we'll just end up where we're at right now. What I want to do is make sure we go with a nonpartisan group, such as the League of Women Voters, and also the legislature. Those two do an external audit of the commission. The commission does an internal audit. We all come together and see what's best for New Mexico and New Mexicans. How can the commission serve us best? We can't just be willy-nilly grabbing stuff out and changing it. For the fire marshal's office, they want to take the fire marshal's office and put it in DPS. Putting fire and police together is like mixing oil and water. They don't mix. So we cannot do that. The fire marshal office also held something called the fire fund. The fire fund is a fund that gives money out to rural fire departments in order for equipment, training, and supplies needed in order to successfully do their job, to lower, which is something called an ISO rating, to bring that down in order to serve us better as citizens. So mixing them, putting them with the fire department, with the police department doesn't work, because when you have that money that comes in for, let's say, also the fire academy, which is under the fire marshal's office. If you have a legislature appropriates funds And the DPS secretary is going to decide, well, should we go fix the dorms in Socorro, or should we buy new cars? They're going to pick cars over the fire marshals, the fire academy every time. So we need to make sure we do it and do it properly. Thank you.
I think we're about out of time. One of our county chair's virtues is he likes to start meetings on time and end them on time. He also, you want to write, some questions came in via email. I've read some, not time for all. I tried to cover as many questions from the audience as possible that were submitted. Why don't we just have people pop up and speak? I know this will shock you amongst Democrats, but some people actually like to make speeches instead of ask questions.
One second. I think Valerie didn't have a chance to speak.
That's
on
awful
that
nice of you. I
question.
just wanted to close on that last comment about
Okay.
the transfer of the corporations to the Secretary of State. I did check with the Secretary of State to see how she felt about this that could happen, this transition, and she said, as long as she has the budget, you're going to need the budget, the office space, and resources to do this, and make sure the employees are comfortable with moving from PRA across the street to Mary Roundhouse.
Thank you, Anthony. The final thing I would say is that although you're not supposed to make speeches, I did have one thing passed up that I thought I would share with you that is not a question. And this person says, I think you guys are going to like this one. I am very impressed with all of you, all four. You've been extremely professional. Thank you. And I think all of us should thank anybody with the gumption and guts to run.
Senator Larcher, having done a great job as our moderator. That's right.
What, do you want to announce tomorrow night's forum?
Yeah, you announce it, because you know the details.
Okay. Tomorrow night's forum is jointly sponsored by a number of environmental groups led by the Sierra Club and the League of Women Voters. It starts, we think, at 6:30. Yeah, at the Women's Club in Santa Fe on Pecos Trail. So same cast, hopefully different questions.
7 o'clock?
6:30. Yeah, and I'm sure, I know people are eager to leave, but I'm sure they would be happy to shake a hand or kiss a baby or ask Geraldine and Tara and Steve. Thank you.